group called Family Endeavor. They have a contract for illegal aliens to ease their transition onto the welfare state. Family Endeavor. They got a $530 million contract just months after it hired Andrew Lorenzo Strait as its senior director for migrant services and federal affairs. And this guy is all tied up with the Biden transition team. He gets hired by Family Endeavor, and they get a $530 million contract. It's like Burisma on the Rio Grande.
Well, look, the Endeavor, the contract is, and he's being investigated. I've asked for congressional investigation on the first contract for $86 million. And it isn't a coincidence that Lorenzo Strait, the lady at ICE who makes these decisions, Claire McNulty, used to work for Andrew Lorenzo Strait. These contracts aren't up for bid. They're not being competed for. These are sole source contracts. So they say there's emergency. They're giving millions of dollars of contracts to people who've never done this type of work. In the meantime, ICE has thousands of beds, empty beds, in the family residential centers that are licensed to take care of families, have medical care available, doctors, nurses, pediatricians, social workers, child psychologists. Licensed facilities remain empty. Why? Because the left calls them for-profit prisons. So they'd much rather leave these licensed, state-of-the-art beds empty and give contracts to their friends in the Biden administration. This needs to be investigated. Absolutely needs to be investigated. This is fraud, waste, and abuse at the highest level.
And they've also spent millions of dollars, I think almost $100 million, to rent motel rooms and hotel rooms for these illegal aliens coming across the border with no prospects. And I'm hearing that most of those beds are empty as well.
Well, the hotel beds are costing $350 a night. I don't know about you, but I don't stay in hotels. It costs me $350 a night.
No, I don't.
It comes out to about $77,000 per alien they're spending. This is they are raping the American taxpayer. There's no excuse for this. The beds in the ICE facilities run $70 to $110 paying to these companies. They're paying 3 times as much to friends of the Biden administration. This is fraud at the highest levels. I said I'll say it again. Congress needs to Congress is controlled by Democrats. How seriously going to take it? But whether it's the Inspector General, someone needs to do a full investigation on how these contracts are being let, because they're not following the federal acquisition guidelines.
And I see here, I'm reading from a headline from Breitbart, second Texas child migrant center under scrutiny amid sex abuse and COVID concerns. And yet, the Democrats are saying, oh, this is Governor Abbott in Texas. He's trying to politicize, weaponize, using all the old words, this issue. But, he has to do something. He can't allow this kind of sexual abuse of minors, particularly, to go on in his state and not report it. Isn't he a first reporter or a first responder? He has to report this. That's what's going on in these federal institutions, doesn't he?
He has to report. It's the right thing to do. The American people ought to require some sort of investigation. We're talking about children. When the Trump administration was in power, we all heard from the left how they mistreat children. Now we have cases of sexual misconduct in these facilities. I don't hear ALC saying a word about it. And bottom line is, Governor Abbott's doing exactly the right thing. And I'll go back to what I just said. They're giving contracts to companies that have no business doing this type of work, never done this type of work, don't have the know-how to do it. Well, beds that are licensed and have all sorts of PREA regulations, Prison Rape Elimination Act, they have all sorts of requirements and oversight that sexual misconduct is not happening. But again, they're walking away from these jails because they're for-profit prisons. Now, Endeavor's a $500 million contract, a $86 million contract. They claim for not-for-profit, but if you look at their website and their board of directors, they're making $300,000 a piece. So don't tell me they're not-for-profit. This is, again, giving contracts to friends and people that work the Biden campaign and transition team in lieu of beds that are licensed, state-of-the-art. They're the gold standard when it comes to detention, and they're ignoring them.
We're talking to Tom Homan, the former acting director of ICE. How about this latest plan they're proposing or floating a trial balloon on? They want to pay future illegal aliens in the Northern Triangle countries to stay in their countries. In other words, put them on welfare down there because they'll cost even more when they come up here and go on welfare. What's your take on that?
The thing is the single most dumbest thing I've heard in my 35 years. Look, you said because of two things. There's two things that people got to pay attention. Number one, they're going to give money to people in Central America not to come. What that's going to do is going to cause more people to come because those who can't afford to pay an alien smuggler, they're going to use that money, hire an alien smuggler to come to the great United States. So the U.S. taxpayer is going to fund criminal cartels to bring even more. Number two, the government says, the Biden administration said they have a right to come to this country and claim asylum because they're escaping fear and persecution. These are asylum seekers, and they have these rights, and we need to make sure they get their rights in due process. But they're sending money to stop them from coming, which tells me the government knows these are economic migrants. They're coming here for a better life, a better job. They're not coming here for escaping fear and persecution from their home government. If they were, they stop in the first country they got to when they left their home government and claim asylum there.
And that's what international law says they have to do, right? That's international law.
So what the government is now doing, the Biden administration is going to bankroll the criminal cartels to bring more. There's an investigation ongoing right now where some of these stimulus checks that were given to illegal aliens here in the United States, they have used that to have their kids smuggled up to the United States with the use of criminal organization. It's just a travesty what's happening under this administration.
And the other thing, too, that always gets me is they interview these people when they get caught, and they say, well, how much did it cost you to come up? And they'll say, it cost me $5,000, $7,000 cash. That's a lot of cash for an American to come up with, really. If he's down and out like these people all claim to be, how much of an economic refugee are they? Or are they just investing? They get across the border and you're set for life.
Well, they're set for life now because these thousands being released from the United States, they're not ever legal. Because what the Biden administration did is a couple of things. Number one, when they get released to NJOR in the communities, he overturned the census rule, which means they'll be counted in the census now, which means more seats for the Democrats in the House, which leads to electoral college, which means to perpetual power. The Democrats, they got a plan, and it's working brilliantly. They're bringing more voters in, whether they count on the census equals more seats in the House, or they give them amnesty and someday they vote. Millions of Democratic voters for perpetual power. Another thing that's going to happen, what the Biden administration done, they reissued ICE new priorities. Guess what's not a priority anymore? Non-criminal fugitives. So if you look at the data, 89% of Central Americans who claim asylum at our border never get relief from U.S. courts because they either don't show up or they lose their case. So out of these hundreds of thousands of families that are going to lose their case in front of an immigration judge, they're going to be ordered deported. And out of the last 8 years, how many have left? Out of the hundreds of thousands been ordered removed? Less than 3%. And what did the Biden administration do in January? They told ICE you no longer can arrest non-criminal fugitives, which are these exact people. So these hundreds of thousands of family units have been ordered removed, had due process, great taxpayer expense. What's their penalty for ignoring judge's order? They're getting amnesty on the Biden's amnesty plan.
And the Border Patrol is issuing press releases even now. I'm surprised they're still doing it, showing how many previously deported criminals, violent criminals in many cases, are coming back into the countries. A lot of them have records on drug offenses, firearms, domestic abuse, sexual assault of children, going back to the year 2000. And they're sneaking back in. They're all across from Houston, Texas to California. They have records, and they're just coming back into the country.
Well, that's just tip of the iceberg because most convicted criminals, first of all, on average, Border Patrol, 20 to 24% of everybody Border Patrol arrests coming across the border have some sort of criminal history, first of all. That's just it's been like that last decade. However, we just know the tip of the iceberg who they're catching because the criminal cartels control the northern border of Mexico. They send a couple hundred family groups up through one sector, so all the Border Patrol personnel get tied up. So there's a certain portion of the border that is unguarded. The cartels know that. That's why they manage this whole crossing. So while the Border Patrol's tied up with these family groups in one area, they're moving their fentanyl and people that don't want to be arrested because the families and children are turning themselves over. The ones that don't want to be arrested, who are the criminals, because they know as soon as they get ID, they're going to get detained.
Oh boy,
they're the ones. Okay. They're that group of 1,000 that's getting away.
Tom Homan, it's always great to talk to you. You're the former acting director of ICE, and where can people go? Do you have a website that people can go and read what you're up to, or follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, they can go to TomHomanSpeaks.com, and you can see there that I have a website there, and you can follow me there, and I give speeches, and my books for sale there, and basically people can contact me there, and I always respond to people.
Thanks. TomHomanSpeaks.com. We always appreciate you being with us and giving us the real story.